What's going on, guys? You are welcome to Web Chrony Online. Today is a great day to dive into JavaScript functions. A function is a block of code that work together to perform a specific task. Let's think of it as creating an app that stores and deletes contact. There may be related lines of code that work together to store the contact. So will there be related lines of code that work together to delete the contact? When these lines of code are put together in a particular way, they form what we call a block of code, and this block of code is referred to as a function. In today's lesson, you will learn the syntax of creating a new function. You will also learn how to use a function to return a value. You will invoke functions to perform specific tasks. And finally, we will build a small contact app that exploits our knowledge in the fundamentals of JavaScript. Be ready to build your first app as a beginner today. Please subscribe to my channel. Like this video because it helps me and I appreciate that a lot. If you did not watch our previous content, you may find it a bit difficult to follow along, especially with the creating of the app aspect. So I encourage you to visit the playlist and watch from the very beginning to this moment. And in the next lesson, we will learn something more to even develop our app further. Okay guys, so with our console open, we will move our cursor to this icon here and split our console as we did in the previous lesson. And we will begin by declaring a function. There are three ways of declaring a function. We use the function keyword, which is the commonest. So with the function keyword, what happens is that we bring our function keyword like this, then followed by the name we wish to assign to this function. So let me say I would like to have a function that will add two numbers. So I will say add num like this, then followed by a bracket. So inside the bracket we can bring what we call parameters. The parameters are what we feed to a function so that it can be manipulated to bring out the result we want. So because I'm going to add two numbers, I will have to bring two parameters. You can also achieve the same purpose without bringing a parameter but declaring them as a variable inside or outside of the function. So let's begin by adding the parameter. So I have two parameters, a comma and then b. So when I bring a curly bracket, everything that I write in the curly bracket forms the block of code, and they will work together to bring the result that I want. So I want a plus b like this. So this is how we declare a function using the function keyword. The second way of declaring a function is to declare it as an expression. And to declare it as an expression, we use the normal way of declaring the variables, except that we also bring in the function keyword. So let's create another one, and this time bring our const or let or var, whichever you prefer, and we will call this one sub num. Let's say we want to subtract numbers. So with the sub num, we will bring our equal sign, we bring our function keyword like this, then let's say we will bring our parameters a comma b, then we bring our curly bracket, and whatever we want to do, we write it in the curly bracket. So let's say I want to subtract b from a, so a minus b like this, right? Then the last and most recent way of declaring variable is to use the arrow function. If you have been following along our previous lessons, then you have come across the arrow function, except that I didn't mention. So with the arrow function, so let's say multiply num like this, we bring our equal sign, we bring our bracket, and in our bracket we can bring our parameters. So let's say a comma b like this, then we bring our arrow like this, and then our curly bracket. So everything we write in the curly bracket will form the block of code or the function. So because we are multiplying, we bring our a, and if you have followed along our previous lessons, we said we use the asterisk as the multiplication sign in JavaScript. So I'll bring my asterisk like this and b like this. So these are the three ways of creating a function in JavaScript. Okay guys, so with our functions declared, we can run like this. So we have created three separate functions, and we are going to invoke them one after the other to see what happens. Then thereafter we will take a critical look at the arrow function and how it can be used. Okay, so let me clear everything here and try to invoke them one after the other. To invoke a function, we just write the name of the function and then we bring a bracket. And if there were parameters in the declaration of the function, we need to bring what we call arguments. Arguments are like the actual data that we will be needing to run our function. So let me call the add num like this and bring my bracket. This is how we invoke a function. But because there were two parameters, we have to also bring two arguments. And like I said earlier, the arguments are the actual data the function will be working with. Okay, so let's say I would like to add 4 and 5 like this. I want to run the code so that we'll see what happens. Now if I run the code, nothing happened. Okay, nothing happened because what we declared is that we should just add a and b. If we wish to obtain the value of a plus b, then we need to return the value. So if we wish to return the value, then we need to have what we call a return keyword followed by what we wish to return. What we can return can be a variable, it can be an expression, or it can be another function in the function. So I'll call the function once again. Let's just hope that it doesn't give an error. So add num into bracket a comma b, bring my curly bracket, and then say return a plus b like this. So if I call add num into bracket 4 and 5 and run, you see that I'm now getting 9. So we use the return keyword in a function to return a value. Now let's try the second one, which is the subtract numbers. Now with the subtract numbers, because it is an expression and we declared it as a variable, if we try to do it again, we will get an error. So I will have to create a new variable. I should have used the let keyword or the var keyword because the const keyword is constant. You can't reassign it. All right, so let me create another one and say let subtract. This time around, let me go for subtract num equal to function into bracket a comma b like this, bring my curly bracket, and then return a minus b like this, and then run it. So if I call subtract number like this and say 5 comma 2 and run, I'll get 3. Okay, because I'm returning a value. Now let's try the same with the arrow function without the return statement and see what happens. So the one that we declare using the arrow function is called the multiply num. Let's see. So multiply num into bracket, let's try 2 and 5 without the return keyword. Now it doesn't work. Okay, so let's try to bring the return keyword and see what happens. So I'll call, did I use let or const? I think I used const, so I have to declare it all over again. So use let mul num like this equal to my bracket a comma b like this. Then I'll bring my arrow and then say return a times b like this and run. Alright, so if I call mul num like this into bracket and I say 3 and 4 and run, I get 12. Okay, now is there a better way of achieving the same result, especially with the arrow function? Of course there is. Now since we are only having a one line in the block, the curly bracket wouldn't be necessary, and if the curly bracket is not necessary, the return statement is also not necessary. So I can create another one and say let multiply equal to, I'll bring my parenthesis and say a comma b like this, bring my arrow, and without the curly bracket and then the return statement, I can say a times b like this and run. So if I call multiply like 4 and 5 and run, and boom, we get our 20. So with the arrow function, if the line of code is just one, we can omit the curly bracket and the return statement, but we cannot do this when we have more than one line of code. Okay, so when we have multiple line of code, we need to bring our curly bracket and also return. But if it is just one line, then the curly bracket is not necessary, so is the return keyword. Alright, now let's find out, still on the arrow function, when we have only one parameter. So let's create a function called greetings equal to, let's say, an arrow function with only one parameter. So let's say the parameter is name. Because we have only one parameter, we can forget about the bracket and say name like this. Okay, so as you can see, no bracket for the parameter and no curly bracket for the line of code, because we are just returning the name, and also because we have only a single line of code, or because we are returning just one thing, the return keyword and then the curly bracket are not necessary. So let me call this function called greetings, and then let me say John Snow. If I run this function, it works very well and it returns John Snow. Great. Okay guys, so at this moment we are moving on to what we refer to as scope and closure. When we say scope, we are talking about the visibility or accessibility of variables within a particular context. And when we say closure, we are talking about something that enables function to remember and access its scope, even when it is executed outside its original scope. So let me explain something. Let's say I have a variable called name like this, and assign it to John Snow. Now this variable, because it is outside of any function, this variable can be called or accessed by any function. Now, so let me try and create a function. Let me say using the normal function, let's say message. Then I will say return name and concatenate this message is awesome like this. and run. Okay, when I call the name variable, I will get my Jon Snow, and when I call my function message and invoke it and run, I will get Jon Snow is awesome. So as you can see, the name variable which was declared outside of the message function has been accessed. So the message function can access the name variable which is outside of its scope, right? In this case, we refer to the name variable as a global variable. So let's do something else. Let's say function and call this one greetings, like this, and say const name equal to, let's say, John Doe, like this. And let's create another one and say const message equal to, let's say, is awesome, like this. I deliberately added the white space in the beginning so that we can get something cool. So I'll return name plus message. All right, so if I run this function, what is the array declaration of greetings? I think I already have greetings. Let me find out what this greetings is about. Yes, we have a function called greetings, so let's create a different one and say function greet, like this. Bring my parenthesis, my curly bracket, and say const name, like this, equal to John Doe, and create another one, const message equal to is awesome. Oops, is awesome, like this, like this. So if I return name plus message, like this, don't forget we have already declared we have already declared a function called message, and we have also declared a variable called name. Now let's see what happens. So if I run this code now, it is working fine. So let me call it and say greet and run. Now I'm getting John Doe is awesome. Now what this means is that the name variable that was declared in the greet function can only be accessed in the greet function. To make it clear, let me create another variable. Let me create that same variable, function greet, like this. Let me add s to it so that we will avoid any error. And inside our curly bracket, let's create a variable called me equal to Jon Snow, like this, and return it, like this, and return the me and run. Okay, so now if I call the greet, like this, and run, I will get my Jon Snow. But if I try to access the me which was declared inside of the greet, let's find out. Let me call me and run, and it will say not defined. Okay, it is not defined. So we cannot access variables that are declared in a particular function outside of the function. Now let me create a different function and try to access the variables declared in a different function. So let me say function mean func, like this, and say return me, which was declared in the greet function, and let's see what happens. So if I run, great. Now let me call mean func like this and invoke it. Then it will tell you that mean is not defined, though it was defined in the greet function. That is the scope of reference. That is where it can be referenced. Outside of the greet, it cannot be referenced. Now the next thing we are going to take a look at is calling a function with function. Okay, so let me create a function. Let me say function called call me like this, and return this statement: I was called by another function, like this. So let me run. So if I call the call me like this and run, I need to bring a parenthesis and run. I will get I was called by another function. All right, so let's see. Let's have another function called come, and in the come I will say I'll call the call me like this. Now let's run and then call the come and see what happens. Let's invoke it and run. Now we get undefined. And can you guess why we are getting undefined? We are getting undefined because we are returning nothing. Okay, so let's try and then say return call me and run. So if I call come again and run, now I'm getting I was called by another function. All right, so we can use a function to call another function. So let's think about it like this. Suppose you are having an application that will obtain users info. Let's say they have to log in before they can access certain things. So you can have a function that will fetch their data from an API, and you can have a function that will find out whether they have the credentials to access the page they want to access. So after you have checked their credentials, then you can call the function that fetches their data and then redirect them to the place that they are trying to access, or the dashboard that they are trying to access. So a function can be used to call other functions. Now enough of the theory, let's build our app. Alright guys, so at this point I'm going to clear everything from here and then also clear everything from here. We are going to put together all the knowledge that we have acquired so far together to create a contact saving app. This is just the JavaScript version of it. In a subsequent lesson, we will create a proper UI and then put everything together to fully create the app. So let's begin. I will create an empty array and call this one contact. So I'll bring my square bracket and run. Okay, so if I call contact, if I call contact, I should get an empty array. Perfect. Now we will create a function that will add a new contact to our contact array. Now this contact, I'll take only two data. I'll take the name and then the email. So let me call a function called add contact like this, and inside I'll take two parameters, name and then email like this. And in here what I'm going to do is that I'll take the name and then the email to create a new object called new contact. So I'll say let new contact equal to, bring my curly bracket, I'll have my name key, which will be name like this. Then I'll have my email key, which will also be email. Now don't worry, we will do something to how this object has been declared. Okay, great. So now that I have my new contact, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add the new contact to my empty array. And do you remember the method? We either use the onShift method or the pop method. So using the pop method, I'll call my contact. Don't forget, it is a global variable, which means it can be accessed in any function. So I'll call my contact like this, and dot push into bracket, I'll push my new contact like this. We can also decide to, instead of declaring a new contact variable, we can put it straight away. So we can say contact like this, dot push into bracket, then you will push everything here into it. It will also work very fine. Another way that we can do this is to just say contact, which is a global variable, equal to, bring a square bracket, and then spread my contact like this using the spread operator, and then the new data will come like this. Okay, I'll clear everything from here, and then uncomment this one like this. If you want to do what I just did, is just control and then /. So control / will comment it out, and then control / will uncomment it out. So like this. So this is the function that I've created. Now I'm performing a particular task, I'm not returning any value. So now that is all that we have to do. I will run the function. Okay, now the function has been run. So if I call the function add contact into bracket, and let's say the name I'm taking Jon Snow like this, and then with the email I am taking Jon Snow at hbo.got, should be hbo, yeah, like this. So if I run the function like this, now the function has been called or invoked. Okay, so let me come here and then call my contact and see what happens. Now when I call contact, a new item has been added with the values name Jon Snow, email jonsnow at hbo.got. Interesting, is it not? Now let's call this function again and add more. So let me say add contact into bracket, I will add Sansa stack like this, and the email I will add s stack at winterfell.north like this, and then run. So if I call my contact again, now I have two items in the array. So we have the Jon Snow and then the Sansa stack. All right, great. Now let's try and then modify our function so that it will look more professional. So I'll come back here and then copy this one. Now in the latest edition of JavaScript, if the key and then the value bears the same name, we can bring only one. So name and then email like this. Okay, so if I run, it works very fine. And if I call the add contact again, and this time say Tyrion Lannister, and then let's say Little Lion at Casterly Rock, at casterly.rock simple. Let's keep it short and run. Now this function has been invoked, so if I call my contacts again, now I have 3 items in the contact array. We have Jon Snow, Sansa Stark, Tyrion Lannister. Cool, right? Great. Now let's create another function that will delete a contact from our contact list, right? So I'll create a function called remove contact. Yeah, like this, and I'll pass a name as a parameter, bring my parentheses. Now what I'm going to do is very simple. I'm going to look for the contact that matches the name and then remove it from the array. Is that okay? So we will use the filter method, and what we do is that we will filter all the element that does not match the name and return it as the new contact, right? So I will say contact, which is a global variable, is equal to, I'll call the contact again like this, call my filter method like this, and I'll say for each contact, bring my arrow function. I want to filter all the contact. I want to filter all the contact with the name not equal to the name that we have passed as a parameter. Okay, so what this code is going to do is that when we call it, it will take the name variable, then it will look through all the items in the contact array and check each one of them. If a particular element matches the name that we have given, it will not be returned. So if I run this code like this, and then I will now call remove contact into bracket, let me try Jon Snow, make sure it matches it exactly. Okay, so I type Jon Snow and then run like this. So now let's call contacts again and run. Now we have only 2 items in it, and then Jon Snow is nowhere to be found, right? Interesting. Now let's try to remove Sansa Stark, but this time around spell the Sansa with small letters throughout. So I'll call my remove contact like this and call Sansa Stark like this and run. So if I call my contact and run, you can see that we still have the 2 items because we didn't match the Sansa Stark. Okay guys, so this is where we end the lesson for today. I hope you learned a thing or two. Kindly subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Like this video if you learned something, and post your comment if you have any challenge. Your assignment is to rebuild this app using the arrow function. So translate all the codes that we wrote in the normal function into the arrow function. Also try to explore other ways and means of achieving the same result, and let me know if you encounter any difficulty. I have a WhatsApp group for people who learn from my channel. If you wish to join, I have the link in my description. Thank you very much for watching this video to the very end. Until we meet again in the next lesson, peace out.